みつけて信じられません。全く信じられません。
出口の冗談が現実ならば受け入れるしかないか。
US Japan そう Win-Win
この気を逃すな。無尽在来船爆弾。
You heard it up top. Things are about to go atomic. As we return to March Madness with another host pick, it's Shin Godzilla here on Normies Like Us with your host, seismologist Colin.
Bureau Chief, Head of Podcast Operations, Mike.
This is Special Assistant to the Vice Prime Minister, Jacob.
Kill yourself.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, we are back to March Madness. We're doing Shin Godzilla. Wow. This was my pick for March Madness because I just wanted to watch it again. But what I failed to realize, we're going to spoil Shin Godzilla, but, Godzilla originally was kind of based on fears of, nuclear bombs and stuff in 1954. And this movie was inspired by the Fukushima nuclear meltdown and the government response to that. Another tragedy in Japan. But that event happened on March 11th, 2011. And when we release episodes, this will release on March 11th. So it's weirdly an anniversary kind of memorial. It's something that's tied into the date. Somehow we landed on it, and this movie was made directly as a criticism of the government response to that event. So interesting timing.
I have a lot of thoughts about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Godzilla's shins, as I've been calling it.
What a weird movie this is about the little space above your feet.
Yes, he's got shin splints and he hates it.
That's right.
Yeah,
I'm excited to talk about it. Personally, I've never seen this movie before last night.
Right.
So this is my first experience with it. Obviously, Anno, I'm a fan of. Evangelion.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think we've all seen, right?
Yep.
We have. Yeah, I like that quite a bit. This is
Evangelion. Yeah, sorry.
I was going to say also a first-time viewing for me.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd never seen any of his other work, really, like his new Shin movies. No. But I mean, Evangelion and End of Evangelion, I think I love, and I would say maybe one of the greatest works of art ever made. Is that too much to say?
No.
I think it's a masterpiece. So definitely love Anno.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was looking forward to seeing this movie that I had never seen, but I always wanted to see.
Now, Mike, you say you wanted to throw this on basically just because you wanted to rewatch it, but in these March Madness episodes where each host is kind of picking their favorites, this is a run of franchise favorites. What I found is very often what each of us will do will be like, well, I haven't had a chance to talk about this franchise that I'm so obsessed with that I devour every entry of. And certainly that is Godzilla for you, right? I mean, what is your relationship to this film, but what is your relationship to Godzilla in general?
Yeah, obviously, I'm a big Godzilla fan. I got a 3D printed Shin Godzilla hanging out, Godzilla poster. I got the shirt that Colin got me, Godzilla t-shirt, and I'm rocking.
King of the Monsters.
Yeah, I mean, this year I finished watching every Godzilla movie that I had never seen. There was a couple entries here and there that I missed. So now I've seen all of them. I love the franchise.
You've seen every Godzilla movie?
Yes, and the Baragon standalone movie. But I missed a couple Mothras. I still need to watch the standalone Mothra movies.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing to me that there are standalone Mothra movies.
Mothra is like
I don't know if
the
she
second
can
most
carry
popular.
her own movie.
In Japan, Mothra's
Mothra's a star, Jacob. What are you saying?
Right.
She's a star, damn it. Yeah. Shin Mothra, maybe one day. We'll see.
Actually.
And I'm sure you have a lot of opinions on the different eras of Godzilla, which ones are the best, which movies are the best, all that stuff.
Yeah, and that was kind of the journey of rewatching all the ones that I missed too, is trying to really figure it out. But this is definitely one of my favorites. I go back and forth with Godzilla -1, obviously, but this is one of my favorite designs and takes on the character. It's so unique, and so that's kind of want to talk about this movie.
I will say just up top, I really like this movie. Obviously, with it being one of the modern Godzillas, it'll inevitably arguably be compared to -1. And I don't know if it's a better movie than -1, but there actually are certain things that I liked about it more than -1.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So I don't know which ones. I think maybe -1 is a better overall movie. It's interesting because I think they have a lot of differences as movies, but they're also have some similarities, right? Um,
Yeah.
Obviously they both have Godzilla in them, but they're both
No.
sort of
Who?
about they're about Japan's national identity post World War II, right? With
Hmm.
-1 being set directly after World War II, and this movie being set in modern times. But this movie is also about just their history of the last, 75 years since World War II, and their national identity, and then coming to terms with what it means to be Japan. So
What
I
like
think it's a really
what
interesting movie. Yeah.
what
Yeah.
is your relationship to what Jacob just said, Mike? Having watched every one of these, do you find that every era has gone on to sort of address this sort of identity theme, or is it really just the core of like the first one and these later two that Jacob's pointing out here?
It seems that at least in once in every generation, they do have this kind of reflective kind of look back, self-assess the identity of Japan. Like Godzilla 84, I think, when Godzilla returns, that's where the spirits of the dead soldiers are controlling Godzilla and he wants revenge. So that's like, another
Oh,
take
wow.
where Godzilla's a villain, which that's usually the reflexive ones, or when Godzilla is playing the role of the villain, that's when they're really
Interesting.
unpacking that. Yeah.
Sure.
But they're generally fairly political. Even like Hedorah, a smog monster, was about the industrialization in the 70s and the pollution issues that
Oh
Japan
yeah.
was facing. So oftentimes there is some subtle political element going on, or there's aliens and it's just goofy.
Yeah,
So
but what if he had to fight a Scar King, Mike? What if that had to
Yeah.
happen?
What if there was
well,
like a
only
little baby ape that's like
A
little Skronkus?
Skronkus, you might call him.
and his girlfriend was Shimo, the ice dinosaur. Yeah,
That's right.
it'd be
What if
wonderful.
he had like a big gauntlet that he put on,
Yeah.
and then he had a toothache and he had to get his tooth pulled by
Yeah,
a
all things
dentist?
that happened in a movie that I
Yes.
certainly remember.
That is a good point, though, because, obviously the American version is a lot goofier. That's kind of leaning into the Showa era, like the punch 'em ups. And this was the last Godzilla movie before Shin, before we get into it, was Final Wars in 2004. So it was like 12
Mm.
years without a Japanese Godzilla movie. Um, and kind of the
And this,
fandom really shifted away. Like Japan, Godzilla didn't have much cultural stock in Japan compared to like Evangelion or other things at the time. This really revitalized, put him back
right.
on the map, so to speak.
Well, and this kind of reimagined the franchise, right? Like I don't know how much continuity there is between entries normally, but I assume that there's some kind of continuity overall, usually with Godzilla. But this one is like a total reboot,
Yeah,
as
yeah.
is -1. But yeah,
No, this is one of the rare entries, including -1, that does not have the 1954 film having occurred. Almost every other Godzilla
right.
movie is happening after that. There's several timelines, but very rarely do they just start over. And so with -1 and Shin, it's interesting that they both chose to do that, because that's pretty rare for
Yeah.
the franchise. So,
And like I said, this
um,
is such a unique take on Godzilla, which we'll get into, like the differences between his normal appearances and kind of how he looks and acts in this one, his self mutation and that kind of stuff.
absolutely, absolutely. I'm saying we should jump into it. Well, set a meeting
Oh yeah.
to discuss jumping into it. We'll go over to do
Let's
that
move into the
first.
larger boardroom so we can,
Yes.
get all the
Mike,
ministers
let's
into
hang
different
back.
roles.
Let's let Jacob take the blame for this podcast at first, and then we'll swoop in and save the day.
Right. First, got to prepare my emergency announcement outfit. Yeah. Oh my God. We'll jump into it.
We're back here on Normies Like Us, where we've made a plan to have a plan to discuss Shin Godzilla.
Absolutely.
March Madness choice, Mike's choice, as we said. Again, first time watch here. I gotta say, Mike, the rare thank you on this podcast for kind of making me sit
Yeah.
down and watch a movie, kind of akin to Jacob when we did our Halloween picks and you made us all watch Body Snatchers, where I
That's
Yeah.
feel
right.
very into a film I'm kind of reassessing for the first time.
Yes, I feel similarly. I'm really glad that I watched this movie because I did really like it. And yeah, my experience with Godzilla is not, that much other than -1, the newer American ones and things like that, and just sort of what's in popular culture. Like I haven't seen pretty much any of the older ones, even the first ones. So maybe it's something I'll get into more. But I
There's
don't
over
know.
like 30 of them, but maybe. Yeah, I got to get my
Yeah.
letterboxed in order. But yeah,
Right.
this is, the big reboot after Final Wars. That's like the mid 2000s, directed as we said with by Hideaki Anno and Shinji Higuchi, his longtime friend and collaborator. He did the special
Right.
effects for the Gamera movies and stuff, Higuchi anyway. And Shinji from Evangelion is named after him because they're like
Right.
Oh
homies.
wow.
And he worked on that show as a
And
writer and stuff too, so.
yeah, that's what I thought. And I want to say, like, even if I didn't know that, like, Hideaki Anno, hopefully I'm
Mm-hmm.
pronouncing his name
Yep.
right, made this, I could tell, like, that it was made by the person who made Evangelion, because there's a lot of similarities, just even the way that it's shot and edited, the focus on, like, the inner workings of the government in the wake of this attack. I mean, Godzilla is basically an angel in this movie, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so even like the use of subtitles and things like that, it all is very Evangelion. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. And again, it's kind of based on the government response to the Fukushima reactor, but it's a lot
Right.
about the bureaucracy. So we do have a lot of meetings and stuff.
Bureaucracy.
It's a very different kind of version of Godzilla compared to like -1. It's more of the personal character story. This is
Yeah.
like you have a million characters in this movie. Like it's a lot of government officials, a lot
Yes.
of bureaucracy. There's so many subtitles to where I believe at times like it has to be almost a parody. Like there's some times where it's legitimately
I,
funny, like how many titles
yeah.
a person has.
I think it is. It's sort of a satire of the
Hmm.
governmental bureaucracy. I think it starts out that way, but by the end of it, it is like actually they're embracing like their national identity and be like, yeah, the Japanese spirit, we can do it together. So I really like was inspired by the end of the movie. Um,
Yeah, when a character
in a
says
similar way
like
to
we
-1.
cannot let a third bomb fall on this country, I was like rooting and like hooting and hollering in my seat. But then I was thinking back on like just the dread that I'd basically felt for an hour and a half leading up to that moment.
Yeah. And like I said, like the first half of this movie is just like a lot of governmental meetings. It also reminded me of it's interesting that it's obviously a response to the Fukushima reactor, because it reminded me of Chernobyl, the show Chernobyl on
Mm.
HBO
Yeah.
Max, because that movie is so much about the bureaucracy of the Soviet Union at the time and their response to the Chernobyl incident, and how that like was was bad. So there's a lot of similarities there too, I think.
Yeah, and so we're going to be talking about a lot of like critiques of government, and there's also critiques on kind of society in general. Some stuff that Hideaki Anno wanted to kind of take a run at in this, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
So I think as we go through, we'll get into all that. But to set us up, because it kind of opens right out the gate. We're in a found footage on a boat. There's a boat adrift called Glory Marie, I believe, but nobody's on it. There's an envelope, an origami crane, and a note that says, "I did what I want, so you do what you wish," or whatever, And that's all they
Yeah.
have. When suddenly the tunnel under the road under the water cracks. There's blood falling into it. We got all this crazy stuff going on. The water temperature's heating up, and the government has a meeting to be like, okay, what the hell's going on out here? Because they don't even know that it's a Godzilla yet. They're just like, okay, a disaster is happening, and that's kind of gets
Yeah.
us in our first meeting before the other meeting, and then they move to another
Governmental
meeting.
Yeah.
response. There is like a running joke where they're like, okay, let's convene this meeting and start a meeting in another room, where they keep doing that like 3 or 4 times. It's very funny.
Yeah, the first
Um,
thing is they have like four meetings back to back to back, and like moving the headquarters and naming the headquarters and the bureaus that we're at. It's
Uh,
very funny. But they're just trying to figure
yeah.
out what it is. So they're like, is it an earthquake? Could it be a creature? No way it could be a creature. And we get this kind of all the
yeah,
experts trying to throw their ideas out there, but there's so much red
and
tape.
and then you even have the prime minister. He gives a press conference, right, where they're like, you know, don't say any unverified information. We don't want to like, obviously give people wrong information, misinformation, if you will.
Hmm.
Um, And the
Right.
one thing they're like, "Do we think it can come out of the water on land?" Oh, no, no, it would be crushed by its own weight. I can't come out of land. So he says that in the press conference, right? And then immediately someone comes up and is like, excuse me. It what?
Yeah.
It's the George W. Bush, reading through the 9/11 attacks. Like literally he's standing there and somebody comes up and he just kind of turns and does this confused face.
Yeah.
Do you guys think the commentary Ano is making in this film about government bureaucracy bumbling life on this earth basically is exclusive to Japan, or do you find it to be more universal of the times, really?
I think it could be both because it's a specific commentary on Japan's government at the time, but it's also like a criticism of all government bureaucracy. You know what I was thinking about when I was watching this too? What if Godzilla attacked America under our current presidential
Thought
administration?
about it a lot.
Wow.
I mean, we'd be fucked for sure, but we'd probably get some funny sound bites out of Trump for one thing.
Yeah, probably.
They're telling me
Yeah,
it would
but
be
we-
crushed underneath its own weight, folks. It's so big. It's the biggest thing ever. And it's choosing to attack America. And I think that says a lot about us, actually.
There's no coming out of
Yeah,
the
I
water.
mean, we
It
would
can't
be-
come on land. Yeah.
Look, all they need to do is put Doge in charge. We can cut down that bureaucracy. Am I right?
Well,
Elon
honestly, I
in
was
there.
thinking about that a lot. I'm like, yeah, this government, they need a government and efficiency agency in here.
they
Because there's a
do.
lot of
Yeah.
there's a lot of redundancy happening, and nobody wants to take a risk because they're like, oh, if I say something wrong, it'll put my political career in jeopardy. Like everybody's just trying to toe the line and not like.
Yeah.
Japan has
Yeah.
a thing where the nail that sticks up will get hammered down. It's like a
Right.
Oh, wow.
that's like an idiom. So it's that's fairly conformity is pretty follow the rules kind of thing. It's
They have
part of
a-
Japanese society.
I think Japanese culture is very focused on image and like being polite and like not standing out too much in public for sure. And then there's also a reaction to that, like the counterculture of Japan. It's like, nah, fuck it, like we're rebels and stuff. So
Right.
but yeah,
Well,
there is one guy that's kind of the main character of this movie, basically, and it is an ensemble with a ton of characters. But there's this one guy that's like,
yeah,
hey, mate, when
Rando
they're-
Yaguchi.
rando, yeah. He's just a rando, but
Right.
he's like, when they don't know there's a creature, he's like, well, it could be a creature. They're like, no, that's a silly suggestion. Don't even say that. And then
Mhm.
it's revealed to be a creature. Like, oh, maybe Yaguchi knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, and he's kind of the
Right.
representation of that idea of like, why can't we just do the right shit? Like, like he's frustrated by the red tape and like all that. So he ends up
Yeah.
having a
Yes.
separate committee of regular people working alongside the regular government to try to figure it out his
the
way,
freaks
which
and
is
the nerds and
Yeah.
all these outcasts, right? They have a group of outcasts that come together and like, we're gonna solve the Godzilla problem.
right. And I mean, this is a little bit jumping ahead, but we find out that that boat with the letter that said, "Do what you wish, I did," that was a scientist, a Japanese scientist, who went to the U.S. and was studying Godzilla because of radiation that was thrown down in the ocean like years ago. And like Japan didn't believe him, U.S. didn't believe him, like nobody believed him about this Godzilla thing, and so he kind of set up the
Right.
mystery. But his whole thing is do what you want, like because the red tape fucked me in both countries. Like nobody cared.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit about rebelling against inefficient systems, that
Yeah.
at the end of the day we just want to
Well-
help our citizens. Yeah.
Get Elon in there, he'll just fire 50% of the people and that'll make it more
Yeah.
efficient.
And get a washing
Um,
machine in the boardroom.
Yeah, I will
Yeah.
say like there's some stuff in this movie I didn't totally understand, like the boat and then like the map that they were trying to figure out. I was like, there's a lot of like technical speak in this movie. Yeah.
Hmm.
In general, because this is a film where it's in the Japanese language, this wasn't necessarily easily streaming, so I also sort of had to go out of my way to find a stream that had subtitles.
Right.
Although there is an American president in this who does speak English, which I found very jarring when it
Right.
occurred.
President Ross.
Uh,
It's Harrison Ford, actually.
That's right. Well, he did turn into a
That's
Red
right.
Hulk like.
He
Right.
didn't get too angry, which is good.
That's
We
how he stopped
all
Godzilla.
Punch Godzilla. Yeah, you're like, no, don't do that. Subject matter, and then I used the word dread before because there is just a sense of dread that hangs over this film. Mike, I found this to be one of the most challenging things to watch we have ever done on this podcast, honestly.
It is pretty dense, honestly, and because of all the technical jargon and reading the information's coming at you so fast. They even told the actors like talk super fast, like to feel like rapid fire information.
Sure.
It was
Okay.
it was interesting. Yeah, I kind of just like kind of let it wash over me, and then if I didn't pick up on 100% of the details, that's okay.
But
Yeah.
but not even just the technical details. What I went into this with the knowledge of, well, this is how a Godzilla film progresses. You know, just from the other ones we've experienced. The big one you mentioned, Jacob, obviously Zero, but then of course 1998's as well, which it does suck to have to bring up in this conversation. But what
Your
do I
favorite.
know of the
Yeah.
flow of an American blockbuster as well? Like when instead I'm pausing at 45 minutes after I've met Godzilla, and Mike, please talk about this being in this movie and how he first
Yes,
occurs.
yes.
But I paused it and was like, is this what all of this movie is? I was so extremely confused. And then when it died, I was like, oh, I'm not positive I understand any of how this movie's about to play out. So
Right.
I'll
Well, the
just put it all.
structure-
Those are all my cards on the table, honestly.
Fair.
Yeah.
I think the structure is very different than a lot of Godzilla movies or kaiju
A lot of
monster
movies.
Yeah.
It's like you said, like the first hour is just, I mean, the whole movie is essentially all just focusing on the government's response to Godzilla happening in real time. Godzilla itself is very different than a lot of other iterations where he has this mutating, he has different forms. And like, yeah, when we first see Godzilla, the first full-on shot of him, I was like, well, who's this guy? That's not Godzilla. That's
would-
some
Yes.
googly-eyed
Certainly
creep.
sure Godzilla was going to come out and kill that guy.
Right. Yeah. This is fodder.
Because he's just kind of flopping around. He doesn't have hands at first. He's like, his face is very different. He's got googly eyes.
He's got
and
googly eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Godzilla in this, we see the second, third, and fourth stages of this mutation. The first form, we just see the tail, but he's constantly mutating throughout the movie. And the sense of Godzilla we get in this is it's not really of like animosity. It's just a thing that's trying not to die. You know, like it's kind of in constant pain is what the pitch was. And so it's just adapting to like, now I'm on land and this sucks. How can I walk on land better? Why are they shooting missiles? I guess I need lasers to stop the missiles. Like Godzilla is just trying to not
mutating
die,
to react to
basically.
its environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this
And
first
I think
form,
I feel like this is the least like the most alien that Godzilla's ever been to me, where it's like he's not just a giant lizard like I think of him normally as. He's like so alien, he doesn't even seem like he's from this planet, and the way his internal organs and things work is so alien to me as a human. It's fascinating. Yeah.
No, and that's why I love this take. I like this is my favorite depiction of Godzilla because it's so bold of a direction. And there was notes from Ishiro Honda, who directed the original, from like back in the 50s. He had like scribblings of a Shin Godzilla. And there was discussion in his notes of mutating and stuff. So some of these ideas, like I think he gets a writing credit for some of this, even though he's passed away, because some of these ideas of that were back then.
What does Shin Godzilla mean, Mike, and the entire Shin universe that Anno kind of comes up with here?
It can have multiple meanings. I generally think it just kind of means new or like the next version, you know, next evolution. But just like new, like Neo Tokyo, like New Tokyo, something else in the Hideki work.
Okay.
So
Well,
it's just like
it is a Godzilla that is new and changing. That's interesting.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
this first instance of him, they named all of them. The internet decided to name every form based on the neighborhood they were in. And this first little googly-eyed guy, he's called Kamata-kun, and everybody loves him. He's so popular in Japan. He's like the mascot of this movie almost, is Kamata-kun.
I don't like him. I would have called him the chicken. So
He is kind of like a chicken. But yeah, we get Kamata-kun.
I was like, yeah.
I
just thought it was like a different monster. You know, I was like, this is not Godzilla to me. This is some other weirdo.
Interesting.
But then I saw that he evolves, and I was like, oh, that makes sense.
They originally wanted to have like Godzilla split into two and have there was different versions in the script, but Toho was like, no, you can't do that. But you can let it evolve as long as it eventually evolves into something that looks like a regular
Yeah.
Godzilla. So that was their thing.
Well, it's really diverting from the canon of Godzilla that I know of, and I
Mm-hmm.
know Toho has like certain rules with Godzilla, like a certain rule book where it's like you can't show him ever dying completely in the movie. Like he always has to be able to have the ability to come back, even in -1
Oh.
when there's like he sinks to like part of him sinks to the bottom of the ocean. And it's
Yeah,
like,
the G
oh, he's
cells.
going to regrow into Godzilla, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's certain things
Um,
that Toho won't let you do, but this does divert a lot from the normal image that you would think of Godzilla.
yeah. So we get Kamada-kun, and then as he's on land, he's like blood coming out of his gills. It's really like horrific stuff, really. And he's just flopping
Yeah.
around, doesn't know what he's doing. He eventually evolves to be able to stand up a little bit. This is Shinagawa-kun, and after causing destruction, they notice his body heat is going crazy. And in order to like regulate his body heat, he goes back into the ocean for a little bit of time. So we have this first attack, and then the government is kind of left with dealing with that while we wait for when is Godzilla going to return.
Now, as I said, watched this online, and I found a blurb, and I was spoiled a little bit because as I went to click on the link, a clearly AI generated text had spelled out kind of a plot synopsis of this film, and I know it was AI generated because the first line was, "With when it comes to Godzilla, you have the power!" Exclamation point, and then
Wow.
it said, "Our fiendish friend with gills comes to land and causes havoc," and I clicked on play, and my only first thought was, Godzilla doesn't have gills, I don't think. I'm pretty sure he breathes like I do. And the fact
Right.
that the first image you see in this movie is him vomiting blood out of his gills was something I couldn't have imagined if you'd
It's
given me
wild.
1,000 years to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when they say like, oh, he has gills, but he has feet like a lungfish. When they're trying to describe his first form and like what kind of animal he could be, like they bring in these biologists and stuff. They're like, it's like nothing, no animal that we've ever seen, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
there's
well, like the inside of him, like they discover is like it's like a nuclear reactor basically, and he can overheat. And he uses a blood cooling system where he jumps blood out of his gills, and that cools him down, I guess. It's very very strange,
Oh,
but yeah,
the biology of this Godzilla is really interesting because a creature that size like would not be able to stand up its own weight, right? So the way they kind of
yeah.
explain it away,
That's
or
what they
like
thought.
the calorie needs of it would be so outrageous. So to make it a nuclear reactor, it's like, yeah, it can't eat enough food to live. It has to be nuclear powered. That's an interesting way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You guys like whenever very boring scientists, in my opinion, point out things like, well, dinosaurs would have had to have two brains to exist. Or I'm like, shut up. Just let me have dinosaurs.
Well, now they have
yeah.
feathers. All right. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Just
so
make him
there's a
look
lot
cool,
of
like in
like,
Jurassic Park.
yeah, but we get a lot of people making, suggestions that are getting turned down that turn out to be true. It's like, oh, it can't come on land, it comes on land. Oh, it can't stand up, it stands up. It's not nuclear powered. Oh, it is nuclear powered. That woman comes in and she's like, yeah, it could be nuclear. And so everybody's shooting down these ideas, and in the end, they get
Right.
egg on their face every single time.
Yeah, but Yaguchi, he has the bold vision to lead a team. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
We get a great montage of setting up their office. They're bringing in the printers, the chairs, the
Yeah.
laptops. It's like,
Again, this all reminded me of like Evangelion, like the organization, like just the way it's shot and edited, like this
Yeah.
fast editing and stuff, the focus on like close-ups of like hands and stuff like that.
Well,
Mhm.
and Jacob, you said that comment about you would have known who made this, regardless, if you didn't know or not. Ano's very specific ennui of perspective. He's so interested in perspective that the actual first shot of this film is essentially like found footage or
Mhm.
POV through a manufactured camera. A lot of it almost feels like it has a fisheye lens, like it'll be a bureaucrat will be this close to the camera and then someone behind him will be talking to. He literally
Yeah.
does the what if we saw it from the computer screen's perspective, and he'll overlay the text from the screen
Right.
or
It's like a
overlay
bunch
the
of people
text from a
standing in front of the
paper. Like it's just
Yeah.
you're
screen.
drowning in like truly bureaucracy is crushing you at every level, that like even the forms that you would have to fill out to get stuff done like are visually crushing the screen. Like he's God, he's just the most interesting person ever. And Mike, I'm sorry to go back to it if you'd already
No.
said it, but what was your relationship with Evangelion?
I've
Were you
watched.
big on that?
I've seen the series twice, but I haven't rewatched like
Yeah.
the updated movies. I feel like I need to as an adult, but I liked it a lot.
Rebuild.
Cruel Angel
You've
Pieces.
seen End of
That
You've
slaps.
seen End of Evangelion?
I've seen You Cannot
The
Advance and
movie?
some of those, but I have, and
Sure.
I've seen End of
Okay.
Evangelion as well.
Yeah.
It's
I
just
think that's
like
the
I
most
mean,
important one to watch. But
it's the most important one to watch. From what Jacob said earlier, was maybe one of the most important artists to ever exist. I
yeah,
just want to again set that framework up because again, this is a movie. We just talked about it. That Japan prefers things of uniformity and just adhere to the collective.
Hmm.
When it just shows you that but you have the greatest artists in the world just like they're existing. Let them flourish. You don't need to be uniform. You could let people
yeah.
be extraordinary. Like he's making this film that is like such a critique because
Right.
he's lived it and existed it and needs to break free from these horrible systems.
No, and you
So,
think of
And he takes
Evangelion.
yeah.
Well,
go
yeah, I
ahead.
just want to say it's like, oh, we got to put the entire pressure like on the youth. Like the Shinji
Yeah.
feels so much pressure put upon him.
15-year-old
It's like
boy.
maybe we're stressing our youth out too much. Is like kind of
save the
basically what that's
world.
about.
But you
Yeah.
also have to have a girlfriend. And these
Right.
Japanese kids are like, but I should just kill myself instead.
Get in the
Wouldn't that
robot,
be
Shinji.
easier?
Can I just be a
But
that's
student,
what's
please?
so interesting is that he takes like genre movies. Like he takes the mech genre or the
Mhm.
Godzilla kaiju genre
Yeah.
and puts his own ideas into it. Like Evangelion, it basically ends up being about like this 15-year-old boy having an existential crisis
Hmm.
and like a breakdown. And that show's so fascinating to me because like the last two episodes of the original show were so divisive because it basically devolves to like stick drawings and like weird hallucinations that Shinji's having.
Hmm.
And it's so like psychological, and I think it was very divisive with the fans at the time, and that's why they ended up making like End of Evangelion to give it like a proper ending with like robot fights and stuff, because that's what some people just want, that. But
Yeah.
even that movie has like him visiting his friend in the hospital and like accidentally like jerking off over her
Right.
body and then saying like, I'm so disgusting. Like,
and then she says
it's
pathetic. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
great.
yeah, it's insane, but it's
insane.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think
It's
he does the same thing with Godzilla, where he takes the Godzilla formula and really like Evangelion is like almost an anti-mech show. Like it's a deconstruction of the genre, and that's kind of what this Godzilla movie
Yes.
is.
yeah.
Yes.
It's
And he
not super
fills it
cool
with
to be in a Gundam. It sucks.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, it does fucking suck. And having your country destroyed by a monster would suck. And that there are lines throughout this like, no, we're not dropping another nuclear bomb. Or literally when like the prime minister turns and he's like, it's very difficult to protect a city or whatever he says, where you're like, well, yeah,
Oh,
of
yeah.
course
Yeah.
it is, you fool. But it breaks my brain watching it. Like it's something I can't even conceptualize.
Well, one criticism
think
of
also-
this, people say it's boring. Like, were you guys bored? Because it's a lot of just meetings.
I
Never
Yeah.
bored. Yeah.
I wasn't bored. I can see why some people, even some Godzilla enthusiasts, might see this and be like, "This isn't what I want out of a Godzilla movie so much." Like Godzilla isn't in a lot of it. Like you said, it's a lot of meetings, a lot of
Yeah.
government people talking to each other. Like the first hour of the movie, he's barely in it, and then about halfway through the movie, there's an incredible scene of Godzilla, which is like one of the greatest
Yeah.
Godzilla scenes I've ever seen, of him just like fucking shit up.
Mhm.
And then that's kind of where I feel like there's two halves to this movie. It's like the that stuff happening. You probably know exactly what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
And then the second half where like, all right, we need to devise a solution to stop him. And
Even post him setting off the nuke, basically, that occurs in
Yeah.
this movie, it cuts to a guy who's like, well, telling people that they'd have to relocate means they'd have to lose their homes, which would, that would just be a real hard thing to go through. And you're like, hard thing to go through is your island being blown to pieces. What are you
Well, and
talking about?
Yeah.
because to evacuate the entire like Tokyo metro area, that's like 3 1.6 million people or whatever, right? That's a lot
Mhm.
of people. And then the prime minister is reluctant to do it because he doesn't want to, obviously, like, it would be unpopular. He doesn't want to do anything that'll make him like unpopular with the public, right?
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot of political considerations. And then I think the relationship with the US is so interesting in this movie,
Insane.
and Japan's relationship with the US, where it's like post World War II, we have this like protectorate treaty with Japan.
Mhm.
But then they're like, yeah, like dealing with the US is such a like
They-
headache sometimes.
They're
Like they think
making us
they like
do this
control us.
stuff again. Like they
Yeah.
keep saying America's bullying them. Like there's multiple characters who are like, well, the US was like the mad scientist isn't allowed to talk, so of course they got rid of him, and you're like, oh no.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's so interesting whenever they show a US, except for one character, which we'll talk about, um, anytime they show like a US official in this movie, they're always like their face is hidden, they're shot like from behind. Like it's really interesting how they frame the US people in this movie, don't you think?
Yeah, that is true. I hadn't thought about that as being a choice, but yeah, it is interesting, and I wonder what like the Arno's kind of decision behind that
Yeah.
is. Like, what's his intent? Yeah.
And like so there's this one character, right? We can talk about
Yeah, after Godzilla
Kayako
goes back
and
into the
Patterson.
water, yeah, then now the government knows this shit's going on, so international interest is sparked, and that's when, yeah, like Jacob said, U.S. gets involved by sending Kayako
Yeah.
and Patterson.
And so she's like an envoy to Japan who works for the American government, has a very thick Japanese accent when she speaks English,
Right.
but I'm led to believe that she's an American. Um, very attractive lady, I'll just say that.
Yeah,
And
she's
she's sort
played.
of, I guess, sort of a love interest to Yaguchi as well, or somewhat hinted at, like, oh, these two people, they
Oh, I
might
guess
like
so,
each other.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like super in your face, but it is like, oh, they work together well, and by the end of it, they're like, oh, I'll be president of America, and you'll be president of Japan.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
she kind of helps. She's like the accelerant to get Yaguchi's stuff going too. And this is Satomi Ishihara, and she said like she was shocked by how much English she would have to speak when she got the script and was like, "Oh no,
yeah,
oh no." So it
clearly
really
a
was
Japanese
stressful.
actress
Yeah,
who was born and raised in Japan, but in this movie, she's a U.S. government official,
yeah.
and they keep
Uh,
saying like, oh, she'll be president by 40. I was like, I don't know if she can run for president because
she's
she
a
wasn't born in
Patterson.
America.
She's American, yeah.
Yeah,
But
No, I might have to see that birth certificate. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
But well, it's 2016, so we're 2 years away from getting President Patterson finally.
Good. Great.
Yeah,
we need
almost
her. We need
there.
her.
We need her
Honestly.
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's a lot of red tape where like the first part, when they're trying to, should we shoot it? Okay, yeah, we should shoot it. Do we have permission to shoot it? Yeah, but what kind of bullets can we use? I don't know. Let's have a meeting to figure out what we can shoot it with. And it's like, and then they go to fly the helicopters and like, oh shit, he transformed. This isn't what you described. I guess we're gonna have a meeting and call it off. It's like, what is going
Yeah.
on?
And they keep trying to shoot it with bigger and bigger missiles and things. Nothing
Yeah.
seems to be working. Finally, they're like, okay, maybe we'll get the US to like drop some really big bombs on it. And that kind of works because it actually does damage it a little bit, but it just kind of pisses it off more.
Yeah, once
and ends
fourth
up having a
form
really
comes
bad
out,
effect.
again,
Yeah.
it's very much, it's just adapting to what is being thrown at it. So like they're shooting it, it doesn't really hurt him. They throw a bigger bomb, then he's like, okay, I need an air defense system. That's when he starts doing the laser stuff. Like he's getting stronger in direct response to their aggression too, which is interesting.
Yeah. Which is, I wonder if that's like a commentary on US. Like, of course, the US wants to come in and drop like the biggest bombs possible on it, and
Yep.
then it ends up backfiring because it just like goes ham and starts like lasering up the place, right?
Yep.
Well, I'd say there's definitely some kind of drone commentary too, because there's a lot of machines, unpiloted machines versus Godzilla in this.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
this big first offensive before they get to like, oh shit, we need to drop a nuke. Like this does build to like the greatest Godzilla, like most haunting image of Godzilla
Yes.
ever in the history of cinema. And
It's incredible. That scene
yeah,
is
this
incredible.
nighttime scene.
They have to evacuate the prime minister's residence or whatever building they're in because like, Mr. Prime Minister, this building is in the direct path of Godzilla. We need to get you out of here immediately. He's like, well, I should stay here for the people of Japan. And they're like, no, you have to go. You have to go. And so everyone's like leaving the building, right? He gets in a helicopter.
Yaguchi goes
our
in a
main character,
car.
like Yaguchi, yeah, they're all in cars and stuff. It's total gridlock. And then they get out of the car, they just watch this whole thing happen, right?
Yeah, it's basically in a Godzilla movie, your marquee destruction scene of Tokyo, and it's shot during the night, and it's like the craziest thing ever. Like, Colin, what was your reaction to this scene?
When you guys sang that Godzilla's colors, I guess in this are red as well, but that the universal knowledge is like, well, Godzilla's color is purple. When he's gonna do his
Yeah,
thing, he
glows
turns all
purple. He's gonna
purple.
get real. He's gonna do his blast.
I guess I know that. I mean, I guess I do in that he does it in a lot of the movies I've seen, but in this one, I was truly very shocked and surprised when he started to glow, and I thought, oh well, he did that back laser thing. I guess this won't be so bad. And then I was like, oh no, it's very bad.
Yeah,
we kind of starts off red and then he turns purple when shit gets real serious.
He's traditionally, blue in normal Godzilla, blue laser breath. So this being red is already different. But yeah, this atomic breath scene is horrifying. Like, he starts with just his eyelid flips back to protect him from the heat. The fire, it just starts as regular fire, and then
that's what it was.
Yeah, and like that's very evocative of the Allied kind of firebombing stuff. Like the city blocks on fire, and then eventually it focuses to this laser, and it's just ultimate destruction. It's like
basically
super
he just
sick visually.
Vomits out fire. He vomits fire out of his mouth, and it kind of just destroys a bunch of the city.
And he himself is almost made of lava. It seems like at certain times, like his aesthetic is truly so
very hot boy.
He's radioactive. He's burning up all the time.
Like 50 different questions for you. Is this the first all CGI Godzilla that's ever been done for the whole movie?
Yeah, this is the first one. They did have a puppet, a large like animatronic, but they ended up not using it. They didn't think it looked good. So this was human being in motion capture suit doing the movement, kind of how I had described. Like, I wish they would do that. It turns out they did. So it's a full CG model, but then they had a guy doing the motion capture. So they're not doing keyframes, which is what they did for -1. -1 was no motion capture. So this is the first CG.
That's adorable. What do you think of the CGI itself, the quality?
I think generally it holds up pretty well. I do like how they're using like real life foreground plates, and then they rotoscope and whatever they got to do. I think that mix of old school technique and camera positioning works really well. They said they wanted the skin to look like rubber, not real skin, as a nod to the suits, so it's supposed to kind of look unreal anyway. I think it holds up pretty well, but it's not perfect, but it's good enough.
I was going to say, like, again, to compare it to -1, do I think it looked better than -1? Probably not, in terms of like the overall animation. I think this scene looks incredible and probably looks better than any Godzilla destruction scene from -1. But overall, I think -1 looks a little better in terms of like its cinematography and its effects. And I wonder what the budget difference is between these, because they were obviously -1. They were able to do incredible things with a small budget. But I would think they maybe had a larger budget than Shin Godzilla. But I don't know.
Here's the thing, Jacob. I would give every technical award to -1. I kept calling it 0 earlier. To -1. And I agree with you in that I think that film obviously looks better than this film. But I also agree with you in that I think this atomic breath scene is astounding and is maybe one of the best things I've ever even seen in a Godzilla film. Even though -1 has a very similar scene that, core to that the messaging of that film has more of a World War II. You get more of an eye view on the ground, like almost like people reacting to the bomb getting hit. But there's something about this that's just, it's destruction in a way that I've never seen before, and that it really truly got a visceral reaction from me of like, that is what the Armageddon would look like.
Yeah. And again, with it reminded me of like angel scenes in Evangelion, where there's a lot of like religious symbolism and imagery in that show, and this truly is like, oh, that's a Godzilla. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that name is very accurate. And when he's shooting the freaking purple lasers out of him everywhere, like, oh my god.
That's
crazy.
That scene is why I wanted you guys to watch it, because it's like There's some wide shots in there, like it's crazy. Like he's just, and when he walks around, like the power first goes out, so the whole neighborhood's blacked out, and it's only illuminated
Yeah.
by his fire and his laser. It is
Yeah.
visually
It's
stunning.
incredible.
Yeah,
You guys,
incredible
have
work.
you guys, were you guys Twin Peaks fans at all?
I
Yeah.
have seen it.
The series The Return, Jacob, I don't know if you ever saw it, the
I never
follow-up
watched that,
third
but I
season.
need to.
It's
Yeah.
so Twin Peaks on purpose and all David Lynch material has special effects that basically looks like what if you had Lamb Chop the puppet as like CGI, right? Like it's
Yeah.
made to look fake
Mm.
because he wants you to know that it's a special effect, that he's like, it's not real.
Right.
I'm putting a not real thing into our movie. But he does an atomic bomb sequence in The Return that people say is better than Oppenheimer. Like literally they say it's one of the best special effects that ever has been pulled off. That
Wow.
is maybe now trumped, in my opinion, by this sequence, which is, again, I think the most powerful depiction of destruction I've ever seen on film. And it's also by a person that would argue Hideki Anno is like, I'm putting fucking fake shit. I don't care if you think this is real or not, but all of a sudden he'll be
Yeah.
like, no, actually let me haunt your dreams for the rest of time.
Yeah. It's like the first time I saw this movie and that scene happened and they have the song Who Will Know with that choir, you know,
Yeah.
singing, and it's like my jaw was like to the floor. I couldn't believe like what I was
Yeah.
witnessing. It's
No,
an
that
incredible
scene-
scene.
I'm glad you guys agree with me too, because like that scene was what really sold me on this movie, because I was like, I just sat through in like an hour of government meetings, like when are we
Yeah.
gonna get to like Godzilla doing Godzilla things, and then this scene happens, like what the fuck? Like now I'm like super in on this movie. So
He does the
yeah.
most Godzilla a Godzilla has ever done in that scene.
Yeah.
It makes you want to scream at that first hour of every person in a meeting. You made him do this. Like you let
Yeah.
him get to this point. Like it drives you crazy.
And that is the
Yeah.
theme that I wanted to touch on that I haven't seen in any other reviews online and stuff that I was researching for this. I haven't seen the one-to-one of Godzilla as an organism whose cells can adapt immediately to change to help it survive. Meanwhile, we have the government, which is a cellular organism that cannot adapt to do anything. So it's the clashing of adaptation versus stagnation.
That's
Very
wild.
true. But I think
Yeah.
that's kind of what the second half of the movie is, because
Yes.
so when this scene happens, part of the fallout of this scene is that Godzilla's laser blows up the helicopter that contains the prime minister and a bunch of the high up government people.
Yep.
And they're all killed, right? So there's this power vacuum in the government. You know, we get this kind of montage of like, oh, the aftermath of all this stuff. And then it's like Yaguchi and these other like younger characters who are more willing to do bold things and like take risks, right?
Yeah, they're like
That are like step in.
Yeah, they have like a side committee where they're like outsiders. It's just like professionals in their known fields. They're not necessarily politicians. And his thing is like, we don't do formality here. There's no fucking hierarchy. No one's nobody's boss.
Yeah.
We just get information where it needs to be. All right? All right. And that's kind of their thing. Ready,
Yeah.
break.
But I just love the symbolism of like Godzilla literally killing off the old guard of
Yeah.
politics that like refuse to change their ways, and then the new generation comes in. And it's like, we're gonna solve this problem.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we have like a fill-in prime minister, one of the cabinet members who is alive, but this is where the international pressure really kicks in, and we do get the ticking clock of, we're going to drop a nuke in like 2 weeks. You have 2 weeks to figure it out, Yaguchi, and this is where the race begins. To
Solve
to
your
stop it.
problem
Again, that
or we'll
brings up
solve your
the-
problem.
Yes.
Yeah. Brings up memories of World War II, where U.S. dropped bombs on Japan, and it was
And that's-
very bad.
And like when Colin's, yeah, and that guy gives that speech, like, we will not let a third bomb be dropped on Japan. Like, there's no fucking way.
Right.
That's really powerful stuff, you know?
Yeah.
But they have eventually determined that, oh shit, you know, like a nuclear reactor, if we could cause it to like overheat or like do a shutdown of it, then he shut down all of his cells, shut down the reactor, we could stop Godzilla. So they kind of come up with a coagulant idea.
Right.
And that's kind
Coagulate
of
his
their
blood, freeze him,
You can
turn him into a
inject
statue.
him with coagulant into his
This
blood.
is it's very good. I like all of this. I like how it's being conveyed to me. We do have to shout out Ano-san also wrote this film. It's
Mm.
not just that he's the director, like he is coming up with all this.
Right.
The clever conceit, because we've also got this background mystery where as this coagulation stuff's coming up, they're also talking about this other mysterious doctor who did these experiments, this radiation stuff, again, warned that a Gojira-like event, and now they've taken to unofficially calling him Gojira. We're getting all that stuff right.
Mm-hmm.
Is playing out in the background. Mike, you said the origami thing on the boat. The way we're conveying information about Gojira's body is this origami dinosaur, lizard monster that they're flipping out to like show the radiation in his body, the path flow, where the coagulant would go, like what's going on in him, and they're flipping the paper back and forth. It's such a genius tool to convey information. It's visually interesting. It's part of the plot. It's one of a kind. I've never seen anything like it. Like, this is such a fucking good screenplay. Is it worth pointing out now? This won 7 Japanese Academy Awards.
Yeah, that's right. It's the second most profitable movie that year behind Kimi no Namae, Your Name. But it was like, it's pretty good for a Godzilla movie, which was considered a dead genre.
Yes.
Yeah, it didn't really have the crossover appeal in the West that -1 had, 2 years ago, where even that got, that won an Oscar, an American Oscar, the best Oscars, of course.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that like Shin Godzilla didn't really get that recognition when it came out.
Yeah.
No, and it didn't really get a big push internationally. And watching it and even talking about it, it does feel like it's very much a Godzilla movie for Japanese audiences first and foremost.
Yeah.
-1 has a little bit more broad appeal with the human story aspects of it.
Yeah.
And that's what's so interesting is that like, -1, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not like a Godzilla expert, but like that's like a very traditionalist take on Godzilla that's like executed very well.
Yep.
Whereas this is like a very unique, different take on it by like an auteur, Ano, who's like, I'm going to put my own spin on it. And it's going to be different than any Godzilla you've ever seen.
Yeah. 54 and -1. Yeah, -1 is basically like a remake of that, like a modern remake version of the classic nuclear Godzilla. This one is completely different. That's why I like it.
To have the American popcorn garbage going on at the same time too. Let fucking James Bond do this. Let there be 6 different directors who all get to make a James Bond thing. You know what I mean? Like I want to see every country's. Well, now I'm very worried about it.
Yeah. But you have the legendary movies, which I enjoy those movies, but like they really can't hold a candle to like Shin Godzilla or -1 like that. I just think these are.
Let Japan make an Oppenheimer film now where he's the villain. You know what I mean? Like let every country have a fucking response and take onto something. That's my opinion on it.
Yeah. But this movie does we get into the heavier political side of stuff in the second half too, with Japan being like, I have back channels to France and Germany. We're going to use their computers and get this stuff going.
The scenes with the Germans, another scene where my jaw dropped. I was like, what is going on in this movie?
Yeah.
But it's real. So Japan's relationship with the U.S. is so interesting too, because like, and this is something that happened recently in the world where Trump was talking about this self-defense treaty that we have with Japan, where he's like, if you can believe it, we have a treaty with Japan where we have to protect them, but they don't have to protect us. Nobody knows why. Well, the reason why is because we made this treaty after World War II, and we were so scared of Japan remilitarizing. Like we didn't let Japan remilitarize because the last time they were militarized, they did World War II. But so like we need to. So we'll protect you, but don't worry about rearming yourselves. Like we'll protect you. And then Japan, obviously, over the many decades, is like, we're kind of tired of like the U.S. thinking like they're the boss of us, basically.
And there's a little bit of that too, because her thing is, you're only going to share information with the U.S. That's how we're going to do it. That's what Patterson says. But then eventually, our homie Yaguchi's like, nah, screw that. I'm going to get some German computers. We're going to have international cooperation to solve the Godzilla problem. And there's a big message of kind of Japan standing on its own feet, I guess, a little bit of.
Right. Well,
that
of course,
vibe.
America thinks like they're the world police of everyone, right? So
Hmm.
they have to be involved in every situation. Um, and so
Yeah.
it's just interesting in like with current events. This came out in 2016, but with everything that's unfolded in
Well,
the
nothing.
last decade, it's
Nothing bad
interesting.
ever happened in 2016 either.
No, that was the
Yeah.
start. That's what led to the situation we're in now. But
He's
Godzilla
mutating.
killed Harambe.
Oh yeah.
When Harambe was mutating and we had to put him down.
Right. Oh my God.
that's
Yeah.
right.
But Keiko Patterson eventually starts to sympathize with the Japanese side, even, and she has that conversation with her father, who's like, "Yeah, but don't you want to be president? You got to work for the U.S." So like, even she's getting kind of
Yeah, and by the end, she's like,
held back by
fuck it, I'm
bureaucracy.
staying in." Like she's supposed to evacuate with like the other U.S. officials, and she's like, "I'm staying here in Japan. Like we're working together. Like we're solving this."
Yep. And so
Um,
the ticking clock, we get the coagulation, we figure out we can do it. We're gonna get trucks and stuff shipped internationally. Everybody's helping out. We know what to do. We're gonna pump all the coagulant into Godzilla. That's the game plan.
yeah.
And this is similar to -1 in that, like, all right, Japanese industry to the rescue,
Yes.
right?
Well, I love
Um,
this, like the creative problem solving of like the
yeah,
coagulant. And in -1, they have the whole thing where they're gonna like sink Godzilla into the water like super quick to like make him
Shipping boats.
yep.
like implode or whatever.
It's me, president of
they
the
have that
balloon
whole-
company. Let's ready to go.
Yeah,
I gotta rewatch -1, maybe tonight.
It's so sick.
yeah, it's great. I gotta
Um,
watch the Minus Color because I never watched that.
Oh, that
Yeah,
one's great
yeah.
too. But yes, so we get the plan to action. We're gonna get the trucks. We're gonna have a diversion going on with the military. U.S. is gonna help. It's a whole thing. I love that this normally Godzilla's crushing trains, but this time the trains are weaponized against him. They make train bombs that they
Right.
drive at him. It's great.
Let's just hit his ankles. Who cares?
Yeah, I like this
Yeah,
final
like you said,
confrontation.
Colin,
I've never
they're,
seen anything like it.
They're distracting it with drones. So the drones fly in. He's like blowing up the drones with lasers. Like, yes, according to our plan, we are
Good,
distracting it with the
good.
drones.
And because
Yeah.
last time he did all of his, if we get him to overheat, he has to cool down for a little bit. So that's what they're waiting for. They're trying to get him to use
Yeah.
all of his radioactive energy so that when he goes on cooldown, literally, then we can coagulate him.
Up the
Yeah.
cool and really down him.
Yes.
So essentially, they're just gonna like freeze him with this coagulant to where he just gets like petrified basically and can't move.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
the
picking up
coagulant's a
on.
little weird because, like, I think they wanted to stop his cooling. Like, if you do like whatever the nuclear reactor metaphor was, it would technically overheat. Like, so he should have exploded.
What
But
Right.
what is the part where they say, well, you know what's fascinating? We actually found out that he can exist anywhere that there's nitrogen or oxygen. He can technically exist anywhere. And one of them goes, well, that's great. That's like the greatest achievement we've ever found. We do still need to deal with Godzilla, though.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
He'll change the way he will change the face of the world as we know it, as he already has, or something. Somebody says, right? And you're
Yeah.
yeah.
And again, there was this map that they found from the beginning, right? They were trying to figure out like what does this mean, or like this chart, whatever it is, and they're like, wait, why is it on paper? Maybe we can fold it like origami, and that's when you get that scene of
Origami,
like
it's
them
the
folding and
greatest.
stuff. And like, I didn't really understand any of that, but I was like, that is pretty cool. I don't know what it
It's-
means. But
It
So-
doesn't matter, Jacob. It's so well done.
well, this is where
yeah,
I have some questions for you guys because I was thinking about that too. We see on the boat in the very beginning, there's the stack of papers, do what you want, and an origami crane. So he's giving them a
Yeah.
clue.
He's giving
Like,
the
fold
clue.
the paper. Here's an origami, right? So that
But what
begs
happened to
the
that guy? He
question-
just like committed
That's what I don't
suicide or
know.
something?
He
Yeah.
killed himself.
But
or
did he unleash Godzilla? Is this a revenge movie from because his wife
No.
died of radiation
Ooh.
poisoning?
Oh, that's true. I didn't take it that way. That's a fascinating take. I took it more as he really was the crackpot who's the closest to discovering or has the most research on, and went to this place to prove it, and then got wrapped up in Godzilla, and
Right.
Godzilla killed him, basically.
No, that's what I think too. But then the more I think about it, there is a reading of it because he has the genome for Godzilla. He says, "Do what you want." It's like it's almost set up as a test, like a freaking jigsaw. He's like, because as soon as his boat is found, then Godzilla appears.
my
So
game.
it's like there could be causation. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But then they figure out if they fold it like origami, they can unlock the secrets because they're all looking at this thing and they're like, we don't know what it means. It doesn't seem to have any connection.
Yeah.
But if we fold it a certain way, maybe it'll make sense.
Yeah.
We learn about the G cells, the genome. We haven't really pointed out how radioactive he is in general.
True.
Godzilla, one of our great radioactive characters. I think it's one of the things that makes him
One of our
truly
great radioactive
uniquely-
characters. Same as Godzilla.
Late great Godzilla. He's having a Mothra for dinner. Remember the end of that film? He's having a Mothra for dinner.
That's right.
No. But that we've had so many speeches up to this last point with them dealing with him, where it's people in full hazmat suits. Like, you know, they know that in their mind they have lost most of this country, and they're trying to stop a further issue from developing. You brought up the reactor issue, Mike, right from around this era. And spoiler alert, we get this line at the end of the film, which was maybe the sappiest to me. It felt very off what he was going for. Maybe one of those Toho sort of like made them put it in. But when he goes like, well, we actually found out Godzilla's radiation, it goes away really quick. So actually, like, it's like really cool, and like Tokyo's gonna be fine and everything's good. Where you're like, no, there's not a chance. You're all getting mutated. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
There's like a ton of radiation after that big scene. Like there's a ton of residual radiation in Tokyo, right?
And they're constantly monitoring where the
go
radiation cloud is being pushed to. Yeah, that's a plot too.
And when they're coagulating him, they say the levels have gone beyond on what we agreed. And our hero says, it does not matter. There is no going back. We will stop Godzilla now, or he will stop the planet.
And that's like such a sick payoff to like, oh, the creature looks different than what you told us. I guess call off the attack. It's like, no, we're going for it. Like that's the payoff. Like no stopping, no breaks. I love that.
Yeah. And I like the ending when they're like, well, now we have to like rebuild because so much of the city was destroyed. People are displaced. Like we're going to have to pass like a, reconciliation bill to like pay for all this shit, but we're going to get it done because we're Japan.
Yeah. They talk about the scrap and rebuild initiative and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like the U.S., it's like, we're going to drop a nuke. We'll help you rebuild, though. It's like, whoa, guys, chill. So, there's the thing where France buys them an extra day and a half. Like, that's an interesting point, I guess. We love France.
Yep.
Right.
That's right.
And then, the Japanese government's like, don't send them like the information on Godzilla. But then Yaguchi's like, I sent him the information.
Send it to everybody.
I went against the government. Yeah.
But there is some sort of line that they say where they say America says any tissue that is discovered they have first claim to or something, right? Don't they say something like that?
Yeah.
Typical
and there's like
America.
Again, it's the two-way deal. Like just America and Japan. Only you and me got to know about this Godzilla stuff, and then they do the coagulant thing, and he does freeze. But Yaguchi at the end says, "Nah, fuck it, fuck the red tape. I'm doing the right thing. Everybody should have this information." And like that's kind of the spirit of the movie. Is don't get
also he's right.
down.
He probably will be president. I mean, people will very much like him for saving the world.
Yeah. Well, that's what I thought was funny with this with Kayoko and Patterson, where they're like, she'll be president by age 40. Everyone keeps saying that. She's like, she's an up and comer in the American government. She's going to be president one day.
Hopefully soon. Hopefully next 2 years.
Hopefully soon. I'd vote for her.
The last shot of this movie after the coagulation works, after everything works out for our heroes, is one of the most haunting images I've ever been left with, which is basically the camera cranes and goes over Godzilla's entire body. We see this statue that he's become, this like twisted memorial to the damage and destruction of one of our most progressive places, right? Tokyo. And it ends on his tail, where you see his body was formed out of thousands of little dudes, like little guy Godzillas. It is so scary.
Yeah. It seems to imply like he was continuing to evolve into becoming multiple humanoid organisms. Like he could just repopulate the earth with little hymns.
It's the human
cellular divide
instrumentality
happening.
project.
Yeah.
Jacob,
Yeah, this is
it's
horrifying.
so crazy.
It's the third impact.
It goes so
Um,
hard, dude.
Yeah.
It's very one of a kind.
Well,
man,
didn't they
and
say
bro.
like he has like Godzilla has like a half-life of a certain amount of time, so he will like eventually unfreeze and like won't have to
2
deal with him again?
months.
No, 2 to 3
Yeah.
years is the radiation half-life. I think
Yeah.
Godzilla's
No.
done in this one. But they'll be able to rebuild in 2 years.
But
or
he's
3
just
years.
frozen there as like a petrified
Yeah, or
statue.
his
He's not gonna
cells.
come
I mean,
back to life.
something still. I would be like,
Yeah.
you still gotta bomb that thing. Like we gotta like turn it into ash. I don't know.
Yeah.
Grind it all up. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Especially when I learned he's made of little dudes.
Yeah,
they
Oh.
turn into little dudes.
so
Oh.
scary. And we forgot to mention he has tail laser too.
Yeah.
You know,
tail
and that
laser's
he's-
a big thing.
Yeah, he's going
And
crazy
at one
with
point he's
mouse
like
laser
shooting
and tail
fire out of
laser.
his mouth. He's got like fire out of his mouth, tail laser. He's got the back lasers. I mean, he's going crazy in this
He's
one.
going
light
crazy. Yeah. Because that tail was at one point I think supposed to be like a second head, but then it's constantly evolving.
Yeah.
So now it's becoming little dudes. Yeah, it's spooky.
I will say, I want to mention like it's overshadowed by the one scene, but when full Godzilla is first coming out of the water and that soundtrack kicks in, which I love, Godzilla's theme
Yeah.
always makes me think of that rap song that samples it. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking
Simon
about.
Says.
That's funny.
It's a great one. It's like bum 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 bum.
Yep.
But yeah, that's a great song. I love it in -0. Anytime they drop that freaking song, I'm getting so
love it.
pumped. I'm
I
like,
That's
love
the
let's go,
Ikefube
Godzilla.
classic needle drop. Yeah, we love the Ikefube
Yeah.
scores. They use a
Yeah,
lot of old
like, that's
music.
my
All the
guy.
sound effects are from the old movies. They didn't make any new
Sure.
ones for his
Right.
roars. Yeah.
Wow.
I saw on
That's my guy. That's
Wikipedia,
Goji.
Mike,
Mhm.
that a ton of the cast in this is like suit actors. Like it's a ton of cameos of like if it's
Oh.
a random politician, it'll be like, well, that was the first Gamera.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
and they have
and
such
I
a
love to hear
large
that.
cast of like speaking roles in this movie too, where it's just like
Yeah.
there's a million government officials. So that's cool that they have like cameos and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, this would be a fun, I was in Godzilla. I was the deputy director, assistant,
Yeah.
whatever.
To the regional manager, yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, they get the coagulant, it works. We save the day, Japan. But the final conversation with the president, I'm going to be prime minister. She says, "Yeah, this breaking the rules thing, I kind of like it. Don't stop doing it, Yaguchi." She's like, "Yeah, this is pretty
Yeah.
sick." And that's the whole theming, Nail sticks up, gets
That's what I'm
hammered
saying.
down.
There's kind of a
Yaguchi
love
says,
interest with
"Nah."
them.
Yeah.
There's not really
Mhm.
like a relationship, but there's like, oh, maybe they'll start dating. That's what I was thinking
Right.
in my head.
Yep.
There's
That's
two
what Yaguchi's.
troublemakers. Yeah.
Yaguchi's asexual. He's like, "I just care about doing government well. Don't talk to me."
Right. Jacob, a very dated reference for this podcast. I'll just go ahead and timestamp here. But do you think Wilson Fisk, the kingpin himself, would have been able to cut up this red tape and solve the Godzilla crisis?
Look, we know Fisk can fix it.
This is what I do. I fix things. I saw there was a Godzilla creating potholes, and I said, we need to get rid of the Godzilla.
The new mayor of New York. Hey, probably better than Eric Adams, am I right?
Hey,
Better
got
than
him.
President Ross, am I right?
President Ross, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Wonder if the Mayor Penguin could Oz Cobb, could he handle it? Probably not.
Oz Cobb would clean up the Godzilla in 10 seconds, dude. He'd
Yeah.
scare the shit out of it, and it would go like, I'm not attacking that place anymore.
That guy's got weird hands.
Yeah, again, when I noticed whenever, like the American officials, like they're always framed a certain way. You don't really see their face. And even that last scene of Kyoko talking to some
Yaguchi?
guy on a plane where he's like,
Oh, the plane.
no,
yeah.
it's like the American guy on the plane. Like you don't see that guy at all. You only see.
Well,
Like,
yeah,
the side
Jacob,
of
they're
him.
about to go put their gold animal masks on and watch the Squid Games. So
Right.
That's right. Yeah.
you can't see their faces.
No.
And Mike, I don't know if you knew this already, but this might be of interest to you. That actress, Satomi Ishihara, I believe is her name, was also in Sadako 3D.
I do
Wow.
recognize her.
buying
Yeah.
all of Mike's
I was looking up her
Pinterest.
Oh
filmography.
my
I was like,
gosh.
what other? She was in the Attack on Titan live action movie, and she was in Sadako 3D.
Okay, so
Like,
Mike,
this is Mike's
Okay.
interest.
if
Yeah.
Godzilla stayed at the Sadako house, do you think the little cat boy or the girl going down the stairs would kill him, or do you think Godzilla would survive?
You know, that's a good question. It's the unstoppable force and the immovable object, because no one's
Right.
ever
You
survived a
can't
grudge.
shake the curse. Yeah.
Yeah,
you
no one's
can't
ever
get rid of the
survived it.
grudge, but you also
I
can't
guess-
kill Godzilla. So
Yeah, even when
Who
Sarah
knows?
Michelle Gellar burned the house down, she still got right?
Sarah Michelle Gellar
Yeah.
screaming at Godzilla that she quit her job and moved to Japan for him just to live in this haunted house.
Exactly. I don't know. That'd be, hey, get on it, Toho. Give me the crossover and keep that same actress.
yeah.
And
Yes,
do
and
the
put the
Grudge
ring
versus
in as
Godzilla.
well because we do like it's got to be the third or the second crossover. It has to be all three of them.
It's Sayako versus Kayako versus Godzilla. Let's
Versus
get it done.
Godzilla Co.
The big three. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
yeah. Go ahead.
I just want to say there's they're always talking to the prime minister, and they are always like saying sorry, because that means prime minister. But like you hear that so much. They're just so much formal language and stuff. It's just a good parody.
Did you watch this with subtitles, Mike?
Yeah. My
Of course,
Japanese
you were in the process
in terms of government terms is very
doing
poor.
Japanese lessons.
I couldn't even imagine how dense that would be. Like if I started learning a new language, they were like, "All right, this movie is the Bible," and you were like, "Oh,
no.
oh no!" Like I can't keep. What are they talking about?
Hi.
Yep. But there's more that I'm able to pick up, casually. Yeah. So.
You said on the pod, I think maybe that you're taking Japanese lessons. You're learning the Japanese language more than you ever have before.
Yeah, I'm taking it very seriously.
You're in the process of it.
Yeah, we're at like 4 times the speed that a university would be teaching it is my current pace.
You're going to be fluent.
Wow.
Soon.
I'm working on it. Mosugu, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm working on that.
Great.
So that again, I like Godzilla, and they have this Shin Godzilla statue has replaced the old Godzilla statue at like the headquarters or whatever. Like this is the primary mascot for the Godzilla
Even over
brand.
like a -1.
Yeah.
And of course, you have, if you look in our video on YouTube, Normies, you can see our guy right here in Mike's on Mike's mic.
That's right.
Wow.
It's the
I love how his mouth
post-coagulation
opens
form.
up too.
Oh yeah,
his
it's the
mouth
bottom
opens
jaw
up so
splits.
wide, and then he just like freaking spits fire out. It's crazy.
No, it's an incredible design. But yeah, I'm glad.
I just wanted to say on the subject of Anno and these Shin movies, of course, he also has these other Shin Kamen Rider, and what's the other one? Shin
He did Attack on
Ultraman.
Titan too, Shin Ultraman, right?
Have you seen
Have
either
you
of those,
seen any
Mike?
of those?
Yeah.
No. But maybe it helped him get used to live action, big scale monster versus little scale people.
Yeah.
You know.
He's essentially taking these classic Japanese franchises and rebooting them and doing a modern take on them.
Yes.
Do you think he would ever let anyone do a live action Evangelion?
Ooh, I don't think so. That's like Japanese Star Wars, dude. You don't mess around with that.
Well, it's interesting because there are a lot of live action adaptations of anime, like the Attack on Titan. There's Western versions and there's Japanese versions where they've done a lot of, Death Note and things like that. So,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know if
Jordan
they
Peele was
would.
supposed to do Akira, right?
A long time ago, yeah. Or yeah.
It is so funny that is like Japanese Star Wars. It's so big in their culture. It's like, what if the last movie in Star Wars just devolved into like this existential psychological
Fever
thing
dream.
that Shinji's going
Cut
to.
to footage of you watching it in the theater, live action footage, and then it cut to a gigantic head of Darth Vader in space telling you that it was the soul of your dead mom while Luke Skywalker was masturbating. Yeah, that would be
And then
interesting.
it cuts to a subtitle that says, "Are you really you?" And then you're like, and you have a conversation with yourself, and then there's a scene where everyone in your life is clapping and saying, "Congratulations."
Congratulations.
That's all he wanted was this. Good job, Shinji. You did good.
That's right.
I'm proud of you.
He just wanted his dad to love him at the end of the day.
Right. But this is definitely Hideaki Anno's Godzilla, like for real, because it is
Yeah.
very.
It's very, I would say he's an auteur, and he really puts his interest into his, work. So yeah,
Yeah.
great
I'm
job.
glad we watched it, and I guess we could scoot over to final thoughts, wrap it up. Because I think, yeah, this is a great movie. It's very well shot. It's got a great script. It's got some great sequences, and it's not boring. So anybody who thinks that, be quiet, and we'll catch you on the other side.
We're back. You're at Normies Like Us, where we're talking about the little talking dinosaur from Jurassic World. Oh wait, no, it's
In our
Shin
dreams.
Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
In our
Shin
dreams.
Godzilla.
What if Shin Godzilla spoke? I hope right at the end he'd be like, "Don't hit me with those missiles. It
I'm
hurts.
sorry, guys. I didn't mean to
got-
do all that.
I just feel real sick. That's what's going on here."
Everything hurts. His little dudes might eventually be able to speak.
Yeah.
You were talking about Evangelion before the break, and I forgot they did do like a theme park attraction that's still running where it's Godzilla versus Ava. I haven't seen
Who
like
would
the
win?
videos of it or anything, but I know it exists. So they have crossed over.
Right.
Two merch spotlights I would like to do real quick, Mike. There is, of course, the very famous toy. I think it's from Nika. I don't know if either of you guys have seen this. Shin Cookie Monster.
Yes, I've seen it. Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
Shin Cookie Monster.
Yes.
And his little tail has, what's the other blue guy's name? It's not like Groucho or like
Oscar.
Grover. I was almost gonna say
Grover?
Gerald, Mike. Grover, thank you.
Sure, that's his
Grover.
middle name.
His
Gerald.
little tail is
You're my favorite
Grover.
Muppet.
Otherwise, he's Cookie Monster. It's very weird and horrifying. I've thought about buying it a couple times just to terrify my cat with, who I do call Cookie Monster.
Uh-huh.
And then the second spotlight. Now, Mike, if you recall, when we did your last favorite movie, Alien Romulus,
Yes.
talked a lot about how you tried to get the tie-in shoes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I hate to put another quest in front of you. Have you seen the Shin Godzilla Reebok tie-in?
No. All right, let me look
It
this
came
up
out
real quick.
for this movie. They're maybe the sickest shoes I've ever seen in my life, and I am not a sneakerhead at all.
Whoa. Hold
I'm gonna look
on.
these up too.
Yo, those are pretty sick.
Ooh, those
Kind of
are
like a
cool.
bloody black Shin Godzilla look. They've got red tips. They
Yeah.
glow blue. They light up. The entire thing lights up bluish
Whoa.
purple. They look so cool.
What is with Reebok getting all the best collabs that I cannot acquire? Because the Alien had Reeboks too. Damn,
Wow.
those are sick. Okay.
I'm looking up
Nice.
Shin Cookie Monster to see what this could be.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
cursed
wow.
image, everybody. At your own discretion.
He does have googly eyes.
He
Yeah.
does have googly eyes, of course.
Just like Kamada-kun. People love Kamada-kun in the internet. You have no
I'm
idea.
hurt to hear that. I don't like that.
He's hurt all
I
the
like
time
when
too.
he's in his final form, the
No,
fourth
it's-
impact.
I like when
Basically,
his
yeah.
gills puke up blood.
Absolutely horrifying.
Yeah,
But that's
He-
what I
he's
like
pretty
about this
horrifying.
rendition is it's so different, and
Yes.
like just the idea that Godzilla throughout the entire anytime we see him on screen, he is in pain. Like it's
Yeah.
so
My
frightening of a
existence is
concept.
pain. That's what he would shout if he could
His
talk.
hands are like turned up to the skies the whole time. It's like it's so
Oh,
uncomfortable,
yeah.
but it's
Why
such
are they
like a good.
doing that?
Yeah, that the whole every time you look at him, you're just why is it doing any of this? Yeah, it's such a
Oh,
bizarre
Right.
idea. So yeah, it's my favorite rendition
Well,
of Godzilla the character, and one of my favorite Godzilla movies. Period. So I'm glad we got to go through it.
it was, yeah. I guess for my final thoughts, I'd say like it was different than what I was expecting because I didn't know anything going in other
In
than
every way.
Anno. But I was just like, I'm not even gonna look up like anything about the plot or anything. I'm just gonna go in cold turkey and just see what this is all about. It was different than I was expecting, but I really liked it. And so I'm glad you picked this for your topic because it's something that I maybe would have saw eventually, but I'm glad that I did watch it. And yeah, so thank you.
I think our long form series at a certain point could have been some curated Godzilla picks from
Every
Mike.
Godzilla
Like,
movie.
no, I just
One
think
from
the
each
ones
era.
that maybe
Yeah.
even that are just the ones that you think are worth watching. Obviously, not now, coming off of such a creature heavy franchise, but I could see
Yeah.
in like a year or two us being like, I don't know, let's throw like 4 more weird Godzillas in there.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
definitely, I think, more hits than misses. I would be
Yeah.
curious what you guys think about a Biollante if you've never seen that one.
Yeah.
Um, but
They
yeah,
had some on the from one air. They had like a curated list on the Criterion channel, my favorite streaming service. They had like I forget which era it was, but
I
they're
think it's
like
a Showa
these
era
are
because
all
I was on the
Showa
trial.
era.
Yeah, a lot of the
Yeah,
Oh, that's
early
awesome.
ones. I
Please
haven't.
sponsor
and
us.
some of them are available on like Amazon Prime and stuff for streaming.
Right. I have
So
I took a photo during the movie I forgot to mention. This is going back to all the titles. I don't know if you'll be able to see, but like there's so many titles. So I'm going to read off
yeah,
Yaguchi's
titles are
final
incredible.
title because this has to be a joke. So it's Rando Yaguchi, Deputy Director, Cabinet Minister of State for Special Missions and Giant Unidentified Creature Unified Response Task Force Headquarters Bureau Chief.
That's good. Good.
It's,
But like
it's like
I
Anno
feel
loves
safe.
subtitles.
it's so
Like
awesome.
He does.
Evangelion has a ton of like those titles, and sometimes they're like vertical on the screen. Like he loves doing that.
Yeah, they were doing that too, but
Um,
yeah, the parody of
yeah,
just how many titles do
yeah.
you get, and it's so funny to me.
I will say when I first started watching this, obviously I'm using English subtitles because I don't speak Japanese.
Hmm.
And at first it was like really hard to read because these titles come up so often in this movie, and they're
Yeah.
white titles at the bottom of the screen. So it's right where the subtitles are. So there's
Hmm.
kind of in this white blending in with white. So it's made it very hard to read what they're saying. But then I realized I could put on my computer because I'll say the copy that I maybe got from the high seas, because it's not available on streaming where I could find it.
Mm.
Um, so I changed the subtitles to have a black background of the subtitles, and that made it so I
Smart.
could read what people were saying.
Nice.
But yeah,
There's
it took me a
also,
minute to figure that out.
I also think to a degree, like we said, they told the actors to speak faster. Like I think you're almost not supposed to be able to read it all, like because it's just
Yeah,
so
It's
extra.
just a wall of words. You're supposed to be drowning in it. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Like when here's a new headquarters building, here's this person, here's that person, and it's
And I like when they literally have a scene early on where it's like one guy telling another guy, and then that guy tells another guy, and then that guy tells another. It's like this insane game of telephone and government.
yes.
And then the
There's
defense secretary tells the prime minister, "It's like, can we do this?" And it's like, it's got to be like somewhat of a satire.
Yeah, it has to be. And there's so many of those beats throughout this movie and the million meetings that we have. Like, we have a pre-meeting, then we go to the other meeting room, then we go back to the main meeting room. Then, like,
Yeah.
we're going to pause the meeting to talk to the experts. Now the meeting's back on. Like, that stuff is so good, such a good satire. And it reminds me of a little bit more of a dramatic take on this, but have you guys ever seen or heard of the movie Ikiru? It's an Akira Kurosawa film.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
That's very much about bureaucracy too, and like all this red tape. All he wants to do is clean up this cesspit and put a park for the kids, but there's so much red tape, and he makes that kind of his life's work to just cut through the bullshit. So this has some of that energy too, of like, can we just cut through the bullshit and get some stuff done that needs to get done? And that's the nail that sticks up thing. This movie is very much saying, no, fuck that. Speak up when you need to. Like sometimes being hammered down is not the answer. Sometimes we got to step up and do the thing. So I like that messaging.
If you got the opportunity to shin something, Mike, what would you shin? And same question to you, Jacob. Please think about it.
Interesting. And does it all be kaiju?
No, it can be anything.
Question.
I would shin Power Rangers.
Oh, that's a good call. Yeah, they didn't.
You didn't like the new movie?
They made a run at it, but I don't think they stuck the landing.
That was the Shin
That might be Shin Power Rangers, actually. Jacob, you are right. Yeah, it is gross and weird.
Shin Speed Racer? Would that be the
Shin
Wachowski Speed Racer, I guess?
Yeah.
No, they do Shin Dino Riders.
Shin Dino Riders, a classic.
Oh, Mike
That
would
would be
do
great.
Shin Dinosaurs, his favorite TV show.
That's the first thought I had, but I don't know how you shin that. Really,
You just it's just a new take. You just do
bring it
like a
back.
wilder, weirder take. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I would shin the dinosaur show. It's way ahead of its time.
I would shin Sailor Moon and do like the pretty girl. So, because what's the word for these practical effect heavy, not necessarily suits, but these tonkatsu? What do you call these things?
Tokusatsu film. Special effects films. Yeah.
Special, like that whole genre of the Power Rangers, the Ultramans of the world,
Kamen
the
Rider.
Kamen Riders, like all that. It's so, it's something I don't watch enough, and this you really could have
Mm.
kicked off something here, unfortunately.
Well,
for
Power
me.
Rangers. Power Rangers is kind of fascinating because
Mhm.
it was it's a different show in Japan, and they just reused the fighting scenes and then put their own English speaking actors when they're not in the suits and just edit
Yeah.
it together. And I was always fascinated that they did that, like in the '90s and stuff. Like, whose idea was it to take
And
this
why would
Japanese
you?
show?
Saban,
Yeah.
he's a genius.
Yeah, Hiram
Right.
Saban,
Saban.
an
Yeah.
Israeli businessman or
Yep.
whatever the hell he is.
Half of it's already been
Yeah.
shot. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. It's gonna be super cheap to make.
yeah.
But
We
yeah,
need to
I-
get good acting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's my final thoughts, just on the political spectrum of again the dread this film made me feel. It was a first time watch. I'm super glad you made us do it. I would like to tell myself watching this that like I wouldn't just be one of these idiots who goes to a meeting, or I would be out there like screaming for the high heavens like we have to deal with Godzilla. But it does suck that we exist in a world where Palestine is having a genocide committed against it. You know, Darfur had a genocide committed against it in my lifetime. I didn't jump up to stop anything. I've seen the world and the gears slowly still continue to just grind us all up. I mean, it is so sobering, this horror. I'm scared of body horror, and now it turns out I'm scared of bureaucracy horror.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's like, what
and-
can you do as one person? But you can only do so much. But I mean, in this country, we have sort of the slow authoritarian takeover of our country right now, and it's like, what
You
can
just
we do
cannot
about it as a
stop it.
single
It's just
individual?
So existential, yeah. Oh.
No, and it's like this existential Godzilla is unfortunately good for like its matches, but like thinking even
Yeah.
of shitty stuff like Doge, like obviously there is huge waste and inefficiency in the government, but it's not where they're attacking it.
Yeah.
Like we agree that
Well,
we want
that's
to cut the red
why-
tape just like this movie,
Yes.
but they're
Yeah.
doing it so wrong. Yeah.
Well, that's what that's why they can implement Doge, because they can say, oh yeah, we're cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. But they're really using that as sort of an excuse to do whatever they want and then justify it that way. See how much fraud that we're cutting? It's like, well, you can't just call anything that you don't like fraud. Like, that's
Program
not
that
what fraud
taught
means.
kids how to read. What are you talking about?
Yeah. So there's a
Right.
downside of weaponizing efficiency, I guess, where you have to find
Exactly.
that line between bureaucracy and
Yeah.
over reacting to the bureaucracy, I guess.
Right. But the sentiment that the shit doesn't work for the people correctly or fast enough is very real.
Yeah.
And like this movie is kind of
It's a
about
very
that.
real
The shit
sentiment,
not
yeah.
working fast enough for the people. Yeah.
And that's true in our country as well. So
Yes.
it's like, that's why they can use that and be like, no, see, we're cutting through the red tape by firing all the cancer researchers.
Yeah, I have
Um,
Yaguchi energy. Like I'm mad at the system, but I
Yeah.
don't know what I can do.
We're firing the
I'm mad
people
as
who
hell.
are
We're not gonna do it.
researching the Godzilla radiation. We're hearing there's no lasting effects. We're going
Honestly,
to be okay.
That's why that guy jumped into the water in the beginning and drowned himself. He's like, they won't listen to me. Trump won't listen to me.
Right.
There's a Godzilla.
Elon won't
We're
listen. He
seeing
keeps
there's
saying-
not long effects from COVID. People, you gotta keep going to work. You're fine. Everything's good.
Godzilla was made up by the woke liberals. It's a conspiracy. There's no Godzilla. Don't look at the giant monster coming out of the
I'm
water.
hearing that Godzilla is Antifa.
hmm
He's funded by Antifa. He's funded by George Soros. We all know this to be true.
They want to turn us all into little Godzilla guys. Every one of them.
The little-
into Godzillas.
I heard they're making the little guys coming out of Godzilla's tail gay. They're making them transgender little Godzilla
Right.
guys.
Godzilla
yeah.
is a DEI hire.
Godzilla is asexual and woke.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh.
Uh,
So yeah,
It's funny, but it's true. Yeah.
I laugh because I'm in pain. But our administration would have contributed to not listening to the scientists, and he probably couldn't have afforded health care for his wife who had radiation poisoning, and that directly contributed to his radicalization.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, that does remind me. A Luigi Mangione thing, real quick. Is
Oh my
that,
gosh.
Sure.
our boy, free Luigi.
He was here with
Oh,
us recording a podcast. I don't know what they're talking about.
Well,
That's right.
So I did, when I was putting the notes together for this episode, I did see on Wikipedia that Shinzo Abe
Abe?
Loved this
Abe.
movie, or Abe loved this movie, and thought it was great. And I do have to tell a quick story where Jacob and I were on Discord, and another one of our friends, shout out to listener Matt, was talking about a shooting that occurred today. Yeah, this crazy shoot. You both started talking about it, and I go, yeah, and with a 3D printed gun, I mean, that's crazy. And you both went, wait, what are you talking about? And I said, well, aren't you guys talking about that Japanese guy who was killed? And Jacob, you went, no, it's this new healthcare guy getting killed. You're thinking, of course, of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. And I was so blown
He was in
away
that
that you knew
helicopter.
his name.
And
Yes.
Godzilla blew him up with a laser.
Yeah, right. Right.
Um,
Man.
do those happen around the same time? I feel like
No, it was
Maybe
years
they're doing
apart.
No,
That's
years
what
apart.
was I was so confused by, because you guys were just talking about a random
Right.
shooting, and I was like, oh, they must be talking about that Japanese guy. And you both were very serious, like, no, that's this person we know, and now we're talking
Yeah.
about, it turns out, Luigi Mangione. So
Right. Well, he was the prime minister of Japan. He famously
Mhm.
was in a picture opportunity, a photo opportunity with Trump, where they were feeding food to like koi fish. I don't know if you guys saw that. And
Right.
Trump just like, dumped his whole box of food in immediately. It's a very funny picture. That's what I think of when I think
that's
of Shinzo Abe.
that's
All right.
good to know.
So would we
Okay.
rather be in our reality timeline or living in Tokyo during Shin Godzilla timeline? What's more preferable?
But at least they solved Shin Godzilla.
I'd rather
it
be
seems
there.
Like, it seems like
Yeah.
I would vote for the guy who got rid of Shin Godzilla.
I would too. And Kyoko Patterson for president, you know?
Yes.
That's right.
I-
She's going
I-
to be president.
So much rather be
At the
there.
age of 40, I hear.
I
Yeah.
said, on another depressing subject, this did remind me of something that happened recently. In LA in January, we had a pretty big
You know
natural
what?
disaster occur. And I was thinking about that when I was watching. Like, Godzilla is a lot like a fire where it's like, we don't know what he's going to do next. We don't know what direction he's going in.
Is there
And
any intelligence to the way the fire moves, Jacob? No. So far, it's all random.
Yeah. And
But like
yeah,
the governmental
an
response
earthquake.
to that, and like activating all the fire people and stuff, and like how it
Just
was
turn on the
sort
water.
of beyond our
Just
control.
turn on the water.
And how
You'll have
Karen
the
Gass
water flow down.
basically has just like fired people to be like, it was actually his fault. And we're all like, no, it's your fault.
Yeah, and there's maybe some mismanagement within the government. There's other factors where there's very high wind on the first night of the fires. So
Right.
The helicopters were grounded due to the high wind, number one, and the spread of the fire was greatened by
Yeah.
the wind as well.
Yeah.
So.
And the fallout, Jacob, radiation versus pollution. I mean,
Yeah, but like
you
it
will
being this,
feel the effects.
yeah, this unstoppable force will destroy your house if it comes into contact. It's very much like Godzilla. And I was just thinking,
Yeah.
like, man, I would not want to be in the path of that Godzilla guy right now.
No.
It's a force of nature. And yeah, I think the randomness of this Godzilla too. Like it doesn't have an agenda. Like it's just
don't know
trying
what
to
it
not
wants.
die. It doesn't know what the fuck it's doing.
If a fire was burning down a part of LA and you guys were in your cars watching and you were like, man, that's crazy. And then the fire turned purple and exploded and got even bigger.
They're shooting lasers.
What would you do? Yeah, what if lasers came out of the fire?
Oh no, it's laser fire.
Oh no.
I
Oh
love
yeah.
that Sci-Fi Channel movie Laser Fire.
Yo, that's trademark Normies Like Us. Don't anybody take laser fire.
Yeah, that's
from us.
ours.
Right.
We own that.
We will be
Um,
making that later this year.
And I
Yes.
guess, it's appropriate to just have these depression related tangents because Hideki Anno
Yeah.
is historically the most depressed creator of media in Japan.
Right.
It's in honor of him.
Yeah.
As he was famously dealing with depression during Evangelion, and that's a very heavy show.
He didn't
It's
even
kinda
want to
well
finish
documented.
Evangelion. 'cause
No, he's like,
I'm
what's
so
the-
depressed. The
He's
fans hate me.
one of my favorite people in existence. He maybe thinks about
Yeah.
killing himself more than I do, which is like fascinating.
Oh man,
Yeah.
yeah. Evangelion being what's the point? But at least this movie says maybe there's kind of a point still.
Yeah, I don't know. The radiation clears up, I guess, is basically how he ends this movie, and you're like, I guess,
It's like now we
okay.
need to rebuild
Right.
Tokyo, and that's kind of
You
what
think so.
that's what -1 is about too. Is like
Yeah.
rebuilding in the aftermath and coming together. It's a pro nationalism movie in that it's like, yeah, Japan, we can do it together. And I think that's why Shinzo Abe, like he commented, he's like, I like that they highlighted like the Japan Defense Force, like
Yes.
fighting the monster and stuff.
There
Yes,
are
but counterpoint, Jacob. What if Kyoko Ross had said, "Is your war finally over?"
dude, that would have made it perfect.
That would have been great. Yeah.
There are people who try to say that this movie is like right wing in that way, like more
Yeah.
nationalist than I think is intended by the text.
Oh,
I think
Um,
it's
I
really
found
just
it
saying like,
very
yeah,
opposite.
Japan can
Interesting.
come together as a country and not rely on like America to do it for us or whatever. Like America can help, but Japan's got to come together from within and like
Right.
Yeah.
rebuild
But
our
there's a-
country.
I would call it more libertarian. It's
Yeah.
so against any establishment.
Yeah.
yeah,
We
it
need to make
wants
the government smaller.
It's saying
Yeah.
the people suffered because the government sucked. That's what it's saying. But there are people who are like far right in Japan that try to take this and be like, yeah, fuck, and they twist it,
I mean,
unfortunately.
Godzilla did a Hitler salute. That was very
Yeah,
random.
he was talking
Right,
about his
Roman
new
salute.
car. That's what sucks. And you're like,
Did
God,
a
stop selling us
arm
those
gesture.
cars, Godzilla. We're not using your website anymore.
It's going to be powered by radiation, the best cars, clean energy. Yep. Um,
That's right.
but this Godzilla form has been referenced in a lot of stuff. Most recently, I was playing Monster Hunter, and there was a monster that
I haven't heard of
shoots
that.
fire and then does purple laser.
Hell yes.
And then in Dark Souls 3, the Dark Eater Midir is a big ass dragon that will raise the ground with a massive fire pool and then purple laser. So
Oh my God.
that scene has kind of had an effect on video game and pop culture. And just recently, I finished Dantodon season 1, and they have a Shin Godzilla reference too, with Nessie.
Oh, okay. Sure.
And now
Shout
you
out.
know.
I've been texting a friend of the podcast, Cassie, a lot about Dan to Dan. I'm very happy to hear that, Mike.
I love it. I watched it in a day and a half.
Great.
It's so
Let's
good.
do it.
Yeah, let's. I love it.
And I wanted to ask, with this Godzilla shooting lasers out of its tail and stuff
Mhm.
like that, like has other Godzillas ever done anything like that?
No, there's
Like, I
never
know
been
he
a
shot
Godzilla.
like shooting it out of his back and stuff too.
No,
Like I know he's
it's-
done that, or his spikes light up when he's about to do his radioactive
Mhm.
blast, right?
Typically.
yeah. And that isn't even in every version. It depends on the era,
Yeah.
but generally it's now like, yeah, they light up blue. It's only a mouth beam. He doesn't have beams coming out of any other part of
Right.
his body ever. And now
This
they're all
Godzilla's
over.
like, fuck it.
And what about little
fucking
guys?
It's so sick.
Yeah.
And
Surely,
those-
surely the
little
other
guys
ones
inside
make
of him.
little guys.
Which little guys are more horrific? Son of Godzilla, Manila, or these ones? I'd prefer these guys to Manila. That design is terrible.
Or Gojira, or Godzuki himself, or the
Godzuki.
1998 one where he lays all the eggs and it basically turns into Jurassic Park at the end.
That's a lot of fish.
That's the problem with the 98 one, is like that's just a big dinosaur. That's not Godzilla.
Yeah.
Like, it's just Jurassic Park. But
Well, that's
maybe
what
we'll
they
talk
were
about
trying
that.
to do.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Who knows? But yeah, this is a great Godzilla movie. Thank you, Hideaki Anno.
Oh,
It's great.
Thank
I think
Congratulations.
Congratulations. You did.
congratulations. Clap, clap, clap. Stop touching my boob.
Yeah.
Now, Mike, that was a fantastic March Madness as we continue marching on. Now we've got only one host left for this
Mhm.
March Madness.
I
Where are we
wonder who
heading
that could
towards
be.
next? Yeah.
Well, for my episode, I decided, and we haven't done a watch in a while, because our last watch was our top 10 films of 2024 episode. But recently I've been back on my Star Trek bullshit and getting back into watching Star Trek, which really started with I decided to catch up on Lower Decks, which had its 5th and final season last November. So I was like, I never watched the 5th season or the 4th season. So I caught up on that, loved it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to get back into watching random episodes of Star Trek.
Nice.
And Deep Space Nine in particular has always been like my comfort show. And it's, it's a time when, I just want to escape into a world, a enlightened post-scarcity utopian space communist society, because it's so unlike
Yes.
our actual reality. And I think, man, this is, what if we had Starfleet, and what if we had competent people doing things? And so I just really get off on that, like competency porn, I guess.
It's
So I'm
exactly
What if every
like our
government was
reality.
all Yaguchis,
Yeah. We're
Yeah.
heading towards the eugenics war. It's all about to happen. I'm not worried
Noonien
about it.
That's right.
Singh. Yeah.
That's right. So I'm getting back. I'm just watching random episodes of DS9, which I've watched all of it before. I've watched all of TNG, watched all of Voyager, I've watched all of Enterprise. I love that era of Star Trek. New Trek has its own problems. I like certain shows like Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds. But
Mike
DS9 is
loves
my comfort show.
31. We'll talk all about that.
Oh yeah, love
Oh
Section
boy, I haven't
31.
even watched that yet. I've been avoiding it because I'm like, why put myself through that? I know I'm not going to like it.
We'll
So
watch it before this next episode. I'm not worried about it.
But for my March Madness episode, because we have talked DS9 before, I believe back in like 2019 we did a DS9 specific episode. Of course, we've talked a lot of Star Trek in the past. Strange New Worlds, we love that show.
Yep.
Captain Pike. But for my episode, I decided let's do a selection of DS9 episodes, what I consider 3 of the best episodes in the show, to give you sort of a sampler platter of what DS9 is all about. So we're going to talk about 3 episodes of DS9. And if you want to follow along, Normies, I'll tell you the episodes that we're doing. We're doing Trials and Tribulations, which is from the 4th season. It's a great episode where they go back in time to Kirk's time. And so that'll be fun to talk about with of course, we did the long form series with the movies. And then we're going to do Far Beyond the Stars and In the Pale Moonlight. So those are the 3 episodes that we'll be talking. They all kind of feature different parts of DS9 that I like. So I think that'll be really fun to do.
It's a DS9 omakase that you've laid out before us. I think it's going to be great.
Yes. And those are considered 3 of the 4 best episodes. I think also with The Visitor, which is also considered like a top 3 episode. But I picked Trials and Tribulations because I thought the connection with the Kirk, the OG cast, will be really fun to talk about. And there's a lot of the way they shot that is really cool. So you'll find out all about that if you haven't seen it.
Very excited for that. As you keep saying, it is a return to one of our fandoms. I would say of our 2 strongest fandoms, we're going from your episode, and then we'll key you guys off because it's a long one you got to do a lot of homework for. We're going to be talking more Karate Kid, our second biggest franchise. We're doing last season of Cobra Kai. So please do your homework, y'all.
Finally.
It's a lot to watch. Look, it takes us a minute too, okay, listeners?
No, I still have not finished it yet, so I'm catching up on Cobra Kai.
I guess,
they had this weird release schedule where they had released 5 episodes at a time, 3 different times over a course of like 18 months or something. Very strange, but that's Netflix for you.
I think 2 of my proudest moments on this podcast have been introducing you guys to Terry Silver and now Shin Godzilla. I'm glad at least I have 2 hits. Yeah.
What if Terry Silver fought Shin Godzilla?
Well, Shin Godzilla would lose.
He would know where to dump the radioactive waste at least.
Yeah. You wouldn't create Godzilla.
No.
So next week DS9, then Cobra Kai, and then to round out March, we'll be doing, of course, Peter Jackson's King Kong and wrap out our Apes long form series.
Wow.
So that's what we got coming up.
It's a big March. Big March, y'all.
Big March. March Madness.
Beware the Ides of March.
That's right.
Yeah.
All that good March stuff. And we've been your good podcast at Normies _ us on all social media. Rate, review, subscribe. Write in. Tell us what you think of this era, what you think of Shin Godzilla in particular, what you thought of Mike's choice, and what the government has crushed you for. How much medical debt do you have? All that great stuff that's a collapsing society
there's a song
with. Let us know.
Yeah, a song in this movie called The Persecution of the Masses, and that's what government does.
Wow.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Anyway. All right, and get ready. Come back for some DS9.
That's right. I'm excited to talk about it. I love it.
Great picks.
That's it.
We love you, listeners. This is your host, commander of the fleet of good podcasting, whose primary goal is to defeat the evils of Shin, Colin.
All right, this is Deputy Director of Podcast Requisition and Distribution, Mike.
And this is Special Envoy to Japan and future President of America, Jacob.
They say by 78 he should be president?
Hey, it worked for Joe Biden.
Oh, man. All right, well.
Bye.
Sorry. Bye.
Sorry.
そう。
はい。
はい。